Well, hello, LinkedIn Live. Welcome to our May edition of Women in Leadership Networking panel. We have been trying to do this one since last month, and time just did not permit, and there was so much going on. But I am extremely excited about my guest today. We had the pleasure of doing my Unstoppable Lionesses show together, and I was just mesmerized by the information that she has to share with a neurological lineup as far as it goes with leadership and what have you. Things like that intrigue me. So help me welcome Miss Robin Banks. Hey, girl.
Hello, hello. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing. I'm doing. I did a live yesterday, and I'm living in the moment. It's one moment at a time.
Yes,
Maybe we can kind of talk about that neurological grief thing. you
yes.
know, um, I lost my son last week, as many of you know, and yeah, it's been something, but
Mhm.
I process better busy.
Yes.
So I took 5 days where there was nothing, there was no lives, there was no posts other than his arrangements and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, so now I'm like I said yesterday, I said I'm not trying to get back to normal because life will never be normal, like
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
do have to get back into my world,
Yes.
and know that I'm still processing and I still process moments, and and take that time to do that. So let's
Yes.
kind of open this discussion up about how our neurological function plays into our role as leaders, because that's really, really intriguing
It
to me.
is.
So
Well, I first of all, I of course give my condolences to you regarding your son, and know that you have a whole community here that is covering you with lots of love and lots of prayers. So hopefully you are able to feel that.
I do.
Yeah.
I
So,
appreciate
but
it.
I am, of course, happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about something that I am absolutely passionate about, but also that I think is relevant, especially in this time that we live in, where the demand on our cognitive resources is at an all-time high. One of the things that I love about neuroscience and leadership is that when we start to dive into how the body actually functions, how the brain functions, how the neural system functions, we recognize that leaders lead by their nervous system. And
Mm.
until we start in leadership addressing that, we are missing the boat on performance. Like there's so many assessments of how we're doing as a leader in terms of our job, but we never look at what are the resources that we have available to actually do that job. And a lot of times we are functioning, especially as women, we are functioning at capacity, at load on our jobs. And we start to see that in the performance that we put forth, in the decisions that we make, in how we respond in those moments where it's necessary to kind of regulate first. So there's a whole host of things, especially at this time, that we need to consider moving forward from a leadership perspective. So it's a vast.
Break
Oh,
that down for me just a little bit more. Like,
okay.
how do we lead from our neurological pathways? How does that work?
So the way that we think, feel, respond, behave, all come down to how we were designed to be as a person at childhood. At childhood, we were all conditioned, we were programmed, our nervous system was calibrated based on the environment that we grew up in. And that environment, we learned to survive in that particular environment as a child. And so, with all of the information that we have, all of the processing that we had as children, of course, lives with us and moves with us into adulthood. And so, at
Mm.
some point, we start to recognize how I was surviving in those environments as a child is not going to be the same way that I need to function and survive as an adult. And so we have to start being conscious of the programming that we've received throughout our life. And we see that in how we lead in leadership. Like you can, of course, make it to the pinnacle and you're sitting in the chair that you've always wanted, but you're wondering, I have the skills. I know that I have the skills, but why am I not leading in the way that I want to? I want to be a woman who leads with grace. Why am I not able to do that? And a lot of times we look at it and believe that it's personal character when it's really not. It is how we were processed and programmed as a child, and we've never been conscious enough to change the thought process and the patterns that we've lived on that have served us well at some point. But when it gets into leadership, where now I have to influence, now I have to make decisions on the fly, I have to make decisions when the environment now requires me to do it at a fast pace, and I'm not able to do that. It's not a character flaw. It is what is your brain telling you in these moments where there's urgency necessary, but you can't process it fast enough to make the right decision. So you default back to what your pattern was to survive as a child in that environment.
Wow.
Wow. So
you said something when you were on Unstoppable Lioness show. You said that your brain is programmed to be a defense mechanism for your body. Can you explain how that works, and connect it to leadership? Because if we have things that are triggering us and we go into defense mode in leadership, that's not just impacting ourselves, that's impacting everything around us and everybody around us.
Yes. Your brain's first job is to keep you alive. And so it's to keep you alive, to conserve energy, and to make sure you are living the reality that you believe is your reality. But first, safety first. There's a hierarchy of how the brain functions. And it first is going to look at, how do I keep you alive? And it will look at patterns that has kept you alive from point A to point B today. And it's going to always default back to those patterns that have kept you alive. So let's just say you're functioning, there's, certain things that trigger you. It can be the tone of someone's voice or the way that they look at it. Because again, if we go back to, as a child, we did not have a nervous system. We did not have a way of communicating outside of what we were taught and what we took in as children. Your eye movement, that meant you're happy. Smiles on your face, that means happy. Tears, that means sad. Rolling of the eye, that means danger. So we learned all these signals as children, and that became our way to survive in that particular environment. Now, again, fast forward to today, if we've never regulated, if we've never been conscious that those are our survival patterns, we can, as a leader, walk into a meeting and somebody has an eye rolling that has nothing to do with you, but as a child, that was survival. And it's like, oh no, eye rolling, that means danger for me, even though it's not directed at me. That's a trigger, because I remember that meant danger before. So now as a leader, that's danger again. So now I've got to react. The brain starts thinking that you're in a situation where I've got to protect you and survive. So now what do? You lose access to cognitive ability when you go into threat mode. So you're in that meeting and somebody rolled their eyes, had nothing to do with you. It's like, how do I survive now? How do I get through this moment when it's not even directed at you? And so one of the things, again, that I love about neuroscience is because it makes sense about how sometimes we don't even understand why we react, why we feel a certain way, why we're leading in a way that we feel like is not who we are. And we've got to get to a place where we start looking at what are the patterns of survival that have served me well, throughout my life, because again, the brain has kept you alive. So it wants you to continue to do all the things that are safe so that you continue to stay alive, because nothing else matters if you're not here. Wow. Got to keep you alive. So is that where that fight or flight
mechanism comes into play. Like, you know, if you encounter something, like if so okay, so my mother was very boisterous. I kind of describe her. she she yelled, she cursed, she did a few things, but she so when I encountered, like, I had a boss that I worked for 12 years that was very narcissistic. And some of the things that he would do, it would trigger. And my first thought when I'm in that kind of environment is, you're not my mother, I don't have to deal.
Right.
Okay, that's off the top. You know, before you can try to explain it, apologize, anything, you have triggered me because I had to deal with it growing up.
And you're not going to do it now.
Grown now, and I have to deal with it.
Yes.
So, you know, that defense thing would instantly come up. And, you know, I will respect you if you are in a supervisory position or a position of authority in my life, but I will only let that respect go so far.
Right.
And then it's like, oh no, gloves are off, and hey.
Right. But it goes back to, again, you being triggered by what was survival for you. So you take those same beliefs, emotions, and ideas into the workplace, and now you're responding not based on him, you know, not necessarily based on him, but based on how this has made you feel before, and this is how I respond, and this is how I have to survive. So when we understand, again, and we go back to again, we're leading, we're loving from our nervous system. And if we're never conscious of, you know, patterns that we've had throughout life, how we have grown up, how we have, you know, been taught to think and believe and experience life, if we never are conscious of those things, we continue life constantly reacting, not experiencing, you know, the moment, but we're experiencing our past in every moment that we're having, you know. And so when we understand, again, how we function neurologically, biologically, we have the ability to have some grace and compassion for people in the workplace. We allow ourselves grace, because so many things that happen in terms of our response to things in the workplace, we blame ourselves and our character, you know, like we've done something wrong, or we're not the right person, or we're not enough, or we shouldn't be. And that's so wrong in terms of how to see what we're experiencing in the workplace. It's so wrong because it's so limiting, because the reality is if you've never taken an opportunity to consciously be aware of, you know, the patterns and beliefs that you have, then you won't understand that you have to, you know, start to create patterns that are going to serve you in spaces that you're in. You'll never, you know, one of the interesting things, I think, when you're a woman in leadership, we have this idea of who we're supposed to be. And I think identity is extremely important. And we tell ourselves that in order to be a leader, we have to be able to lead this way. We have to be able to do. And a lot of that is it's not aligning to who we believe we are at the moment, you know, or who we believe we are based on upbringing and patterns that we've had. We have to be extremely conscious about who we are, who we believe we are, and then our actions, our beliefs, our thoughts, our responses have to align with that. And we don't take it into leadership a lot of times. You know, we're one person at home, we're one person we think at work, we're one person, you know, with our kids, and surely we have different roles, but we should be the same person. We should know who we are and operate accordingly accordingly in all spaces. And it allows us to have the capacity to do the specific roles because we understand boundaries have to be created when we know who we are, or that I have to change or I have to.
That part, when you know who you are, because that's my specialty is identity.
Yes.
Many of us don't really know who we are. We're fitting into the mold of who somebody said we should be.
Yes, 100%. 100%. But again, that goes back to, we have to, once we understand who we are, our actions are going to align with that. But again, we're mom at home, with all these roles. We are supervisor at work with all these roles. We are daughter who's taking care of caregiver, and it requires, different, activities within those spaces. But once we know who we are, we build the capacity to align our behavior, our thinking, and all of that with who we are. And that becomes the struggle.
I'm sorry. How do we rewire or realign with the person that, fast forward, we've healed from some of the traumas, from some of the childhood traumas, some of the triggers and all of that. We've done the deep dive. We've done, we've gotten the face of God. We've done what we've needed. We've gotten therapy. We've done all of these different things. How do we neurologically, we rewire ourselves so that we're not triggering in leadership? How do we do that?
That favorite question. I love that question. It is a little bit different, of course, for each one of us. But I think first we have to recognize, what are the patterns? What are the beliefs? What are the thinking that we're doing that doesn't align? We have to have that awareness first. And then we have to reframe our thinking, beliefs, the things that we're giving attention to. We have to reframe that and say, if this is the person that I want to be, now I have to walk in alignment with the person that I want to be. So you've got to start to create opportunities where you're thinking different, you're responding different, you're consciously aware of things differently. Because once you start telling your brain and your nervous system who you are, and there's repetition and there's behavior and there's emotion behind it, then your brain starts to pick up, okay, we're doing something different here. Dr. Corlett is not going to respond this way because that's not who she is. So now this is our new pathway. Every thought that we have, every emotion, everything that we do creates a neural pathway. It creates a pathway that the brain has to travel to get from point A to point B. And so if you think about a pathway that you've taken, a road that you've taken hundreds and thousands of times, it's going to be clear. It's going to be clear of debris, brush. It's going to be, stable for you. But when you start creating a new pathway, you're fighting through the brush. Now, it might take you a minute. You're fighting there's weeds, there's things that are in the way, and you're fighting to get through it a little bit. So you may have some moments where Dr. Corlett has changed, but whoops, I stumble. I fell over that rock that was in the way. But continue on that pathway, and your brain is going to say, okay, now we're taking a new path to work today. We're taking a new path, to the way we're thinking. And it will begin to clear out that path. Because another thing outside of safety, the brain wants efficiency. And so if you think about when you're walking another path, it requires energy. It requires energy to, because that path isn't clear. So it's requiring some energy from you. And so the brain wants to keep you safe, conserve energy. So the way to conserve energy is do the same thing. But you have to start to walk in who you believe you are even before, there's actual manifestation of that. You have to move forward in the direction that you want to go. And your brain wants to give you a reality of who you believe you are. If you believe that you are somebody who is, on time for everything, punctual, then your brain is going to show you ways to get where you need to be on time. But if you say, I'm always late, then your brain is going to have you distracted because it wants to give you the reality of what you believe.
I'm gonna pull the clip out and give it to my daughter.
Really?
Sexuality is great for everything.
Yeah.
And I can relate. Seriously, I remember somebody telling me once, like, "Girl, time is not your friend," and it's just like because it was like, okay, I'll get there, and there was a point in my life where that changed, where time became important. It became important for me to be mindful of other people's time. It became important for me to be on time. So for me, in my mind, if I'm going to be on time, I have to be early, because if I'm thinking to be there at that time, I'm going to be late.
Yes, same.
So I had to, that was I had to rewire, I have to go early or else I'm going to be late.
Yes. And the rewiring, I think we talked about this the last time on your show. We used to believe in science that the brain was just fixed. So whatever you had, whatever you got is who you were and who you were going to be, but of course, evolution of science and research has, showed that the brain is plastic. We are able to rebuild parts of the brain in terms of literally things that we thought that we couldn't do, memorization, learning, new skills. We thought, well, I'm not, you used to believe, well, if I'm not I don't retain well, I don't recall well. And we used to think, well, that's what we're just stuck with the rest of our lives. But neuroplasticity tells us something different. It tells us that we are able to do whatever it is that we want to do. We can rewire our brain, we can retrain our brain, we can grow our brain so that the things that we desire to do can actually happen. Because again, the brain wants to give you, once it knows that you are safe and we are conserving it wants to give you the experience that you believe is your reality. So a lot of times we think we're living in reality, and really we're living in what we've been programmed to think, believe, to feel, and experience until we're conscious enough to say, okay, is that true? Because I'm constantly, when I think about how I respond to things, I'm constantly thinking, am I responding based on what I believe as Robin Banks, or am I responding as Robin Gordy, the little child who needed something, did not get it, and now she's over functioning? Am I responding that way? But we have to be conscious, because that suited me well at some point, but now it does not suit me well. It does not suit me well to respond and to behave on the patterns of that young child, that young girl, because I don't need to survive in those environments. My environment has changed. So the brain, it has the ability, again, to be recreated and redesigned by what you think and believe. Like, people will think, well, I believe I'm just shy, so I could never do this. No, you are who you say you are and who you believe. Beliefs can be changed all day. All you got to do is tell your brain, I believe something else, put some emotion behind it. Your brain is like, I am recording that as important, and now we're going to change. And now there may be some resistance, but the more consistent you are, the more repetitive you are in a behavior, the more you're creating new neural pathways, your brain is going to get in line so that you experience the life that you believe you should be living in.
That's so amazing, because we as just people never on the norm think about our brain like that. It's just like, okay, there's something up there. I know that it needs to function for my limbs to function. I know that it needs to function for thought patterns. If I'm going to formulate words, they need to formulate up here, but we never think about the intricacy of what it is.
Yes. And I think some of it is because when you hear science and neuroscience, you think it's so complex. And sure, it is. Neuroscience is complex. The human body is complex. If we understood all of it, then God didn't design us well enough. So there's an intelligence in how the body was created that we will never know and understand. However, there's some simplicity to how we were created. And it's biblical, you know, when God talks about renewing of the mind and the words that you speak, these things have power, but he's designed us that way so that we have the power to really create the life and be the people that we want to be. We don't have to accept, and this is one thing that took me 30 years plus to recognize, we do not have to accept even who we were yesterday. I don't have to accept who I was at 9 o'clock this morning, because I have the ability to say, I am changing who I am and who I want to be. And all I have to do is put some emotion behind that, some action behind that, and it shifts. There's a shift. And I've shared this before with my healing experience. I didn't understand. And when I say this, I don't say this as a knock on medicine. The medical industry was not available to me and was not an option for me when they sent me home and said, there's nothing more that we can do. We see that you in your body your body is failing. We can't stop it. There's nothing that we could do. So I had a choice. I had to go, you know what, Lord, this is what your word says. So I've got to lean into what your word says. And if your word says that by the stripes of Jesus, I was healed, that means that's already done. Now, how do I walk in that? And so for me, I decided, okay, to walk in healing, I had to behave. I had to believe as a healed person would believe. And I had to go about my day as a healed person. So I would get up, I would get out of the bed. And some days I did not get far. But I said, what would a healed person do? A healed person is not laying in this bed feeling sorry for themselves, thinking that this is end of life. A healed person is going about their day. And the more and more I did that, the more and more steps I took, the more and more I put emotion into it, saying, I am healed. Anything outside of that, I am not aligning with any beliefs that are outside of healing. I'm not aligning with anything that says I'm going to be stuck in this bed. My alignment is with a healed person. That was my identity moving forward. I had to act, respond, believe what a healed person would believe. Had to go about my day. Within a couple of weeks, I'm like, okay, I'm walking to the door now. I'm walking to my car now. I'm sitting on my porch. And I hadn't done these things in weeks. I had my family at my house taking care of me because I could not take care of myself. But getting in line with what a healed person would do, my brain was like, I have to, if she's healed, then we have to start that process because she's got to be able to walk. So now we've got to do whatever happens within the body, the healing process, to make sure that she's able to walk. So your brain literally is going to do and create the reality that it believes, that you believe you should have. And I believe that I should be healed and should be able to carry on with my life. And my brain did what it had to do internally to align with what I believed my identity was. And that was being a healed person.
Robin, that is so powerful. I mean, like, so powerful. As you were speaking, my thought went to, we talk about the power of life and death is in the tongue, and we're speaking things because, and we're our affirmations and our decrees and our declarations and all of that, because we've been told that, you know, you're going to change the atmosphere, you're going to change the energy, you're going to put it out there, but technically you need to put it in here.
Yes.
To change your perception of what's happening, and that will make the change, especially in our physical bodies.
Yes, 100%. Wow. I can remember my family calling me, and they would say, you know, how are you? How are you feeling? And I'd say, I'm blessed. I'm highly favored. My body feels great. Now, physically, I felt terrible. I felt like I wanted to cry. I felt like I can't do this. But the more and more I spoke it, the more and more I started to believe it. And I recorded, and this was before I knew anything about neuroscience and this was all my belief in what the Bible said. You know, walking and not fainting, being healed, this was all biblical for me. But then I understood neuroscience made it make sense to me. But I recorded my voice saying healing scriptures, and I listened to headsets every night. And I still, to this day, 7 years later, I think 6 years, I still listen to it to this day, because I wanted my voice to tell my brain that this is what we're doing. This is what we're standing on, because the body will recognize. And again, remember, this is our design. God designed us this way. This is not hocus pocus. This is how we were designed. But I recognized and believed at that point, if I heard myself saying these scriptures and I just flooded my brain with it, that my brain was going to shift and help me to believe that this is our reality. This is truth, because my body is telling me something different. But I understood mentally that I had to start to believe it and put the emotion behind it. It's the pray, you know how when we think about, healing and we pray for healing, and a lot of times we don't get out of that stage of prayer and healing to get to the place where we're giving thanks. I wanted to move. I asked for healing. I believe that I was getting it. And then I wanted to be able to move to the Thanksgiving piece of it, so that I didn't have the fear of, what if this doesn't happen? What if, it's like, no, get to that space where I'm believing. So now, even though I don't feel the manifestation in my body, I know that it's true. And so I'm giving thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord, that this is what your scripture says and I'm healed. I thank you that you've already given this to me. I don't have to beg, plead, I got it. It's already mine. So it was getting my brain to recognize that that was the truth. That was the identity that I was walking in. And so
that is so powerful. I just keep thinking how powerful that is, because even before the loss of my son, just other things, just, the weight of life, as I tell people, life be lifing.
Life is lifing all the time.
And I can find myself like going, okay. One thing I always said, oh my God, now what? Or what's next? Or, and like, no, I'm not bringing this in my soul. No, I'm not doing that. But I can get to that place, and especially in the presence of God, where I will make a declaration. I will not relent. I will not relent. I will not stop. I will not give up. I will not cave in. And as I say that, I can feel my strength. It's like, but I took it as just being determined, and I'm just tenacious, and I'm not. What I had no idea was that my brain was taking it in.
Yes. It is going to, again, it wants to show you the reality that you believe you are living and should be living. And a lot of times when we start feeling like we're stuck or we can't move or we're depressed, it's because we have an idea of who we want to be, but we're not experiencing that. And a lot of times we don't understand that we get to change that. So we get stuck in those places like it's nothing that we can do. This is just who I am. This is just how life is going to look for me. And the unfortunate thing is, again, when we don't understand how the body and the nervous system functions, we get stuck there. We do get stuck because we don't see what can change or how we can change this. And what the brain is going to do, there's a system that's called the reticular activating system. And it is the system that shows you the things that you have said are important. And I believe it's the red car theory that people talk about. Like if you are going to buy a red car, now you start seeing all of these red cars that you've never noticed before, but your attention, you've told the brain that red cars are important to you. I think it's called somebody came up with that, but it's with anything, white car, blue car. Mm-hmm. You've told your brain that this is important. So it's going to filter out everything else except for the things that you have told the brain that is important to you. So it's getting millions of bits of information and signals and, senses information from all of our senses all day. It can only process about 40 to 60 bits of information per second. You have all of these things that are happening, but your brain is only going to show you what you've said is important to you. So if you said life is going to be the same, this is just who I am, this is what I'm going to live it. That's what your brain is going to show you. All the reasons why life is it's going to remind you, remember when this happened, remember when that happened, when right in front of you, there could be opportunities for change, opportunities for you will never recognize them because it's only going to show you what's important to you. So if you say, Dr. Coylette, I am this kind of person, I'm going to always be, then your brain is like, yep, you're this kind of person. You're always going to be, and it's going to remind you of all the things that align with what you believe and what you say you are. So it's all these systems, again, that are designed, that the brain has designed, that God created, that God designed, so that we live in the world that we believe that we should be in, that we're living the life that we believe we should live. And I think sometimes it becomes hard for people to understand and agree with this, because that means that where you are now is a byproduct of what you believe, what you think, what you feel, and what you've paid attention to. And that is not, a knock against, again, your personality or character. It's because we don't know. A lot of times we don't know, but we judge. There's so much self-judgment about where we are now. It's okay. We all have been on a journey, and it didn't always
still journeying.
Yeah, still journeying. We will until it's over.
Yes.
But getting to a space where you understand that some of the things that you think about yourself just is not true. It is not true about who you are, what you've done. You were created with patterns and thought processes and beliefs before you even had cognitive awareness, of those things. It's happening beneath consciousness for you. It's when you finally come into, conscious awareness that if I want life to look a certain way, I actually have the power to create it. And whatever that means, whatever that means for you, it doesn't mean that you've got to be, a billionaire running it is, I want to be the best mom. I want to be the best painter. I want to be the best, whatever. You have the ability to do that. You have the ability to lean into who you want to be and create the life that you want. It's just amazing. Like I think of it and I have to remind myself sometimes, because since I know this, I want to do 5,422,000 things. So I have to go.
I'm like just blown away. I'm like, okay, so like, what do I need to tell you today?
Right. No, it's so true. I have these conversations all the time. My husband laughs at me because I'm constantly having these conversations with myself about what my day is going to look like. Like today, I am not a person who cares about my health, so I'm going to have these chips. I'm going to enjoy some of these snacks that I want to have. But then I go back to the person that I want to be makes these choices, and my choices have to align with, that person that I want to be. But I recognize that I can change that. I can change that every day, and I'm okay with that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I have someone in the chat said that I thought this was a women's empowerment networking event, and it absolutely is. And part of the empowerment of today's segment is to understand that your leadership abilities and skills stimulated yes. from your neurological position, which I think is very empowering personally. Yes. I definitely I've been so enthralled in this, because normally all the way through the panels, I'm telling the ladies, put your information in the chat, yes. Make sure you guys network, make sure you connect with one another. But I've just been so engrossed in what you were sharing, because I really find it fascinating, and anything that we can do to increase our ability as leaders, I think yes. is monumental. That is definitely empowering, and understanding the connection on our brain and how we lead that to me is, that's extremely empowering. But I've been remiss, and so ladies, please in your chat put your information in there so you guys can connect with each other and what have you. But Robin, like I said, I'm totally fascinated about this because number one, so like I said, identity is my thing. And I think that as a leader, we lead from that place of who we are.
Yes. Yes.
Without a doubt. You know, if you're narcissistic, that's how you're going to lead. If you're selfish, that's how you're going to lead. If all you care about is the bottom line, that's how you're going to lead. If you care about people, if you believe in empowering those that you are responsible for, then that's how you're going to lead. And so what you have shared today gives us a better insight in our leadership ability, because we first need to lead our own brain, our own 100%. Mind, so that we are leading from a place of our mind understanding what kind of leader we want to be.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, when we talk about, you know, leadership, we're leading in our homes, we're leading in our relationships with our family, we're leading in our communities, in our churches, in our schools, but all of it comes back to who are we as a person, understanding that, because the patterns of our behavior and who we are and how we respond and how we relate to people, it all comes back to we're leading, we're loving, we are living from our nervous system at all times. So the person that we are in a leadership position is the same person that we are at home, in our communities, you know, meaning we should be. But we find that we're different people. And this is where the mismatch happens in leadership when we get into roles. Sometimes this is where capacity erodes, because we're trying to do all of these things, be all of these people, and it's not aligning to who we actually are from a nervous system perspective. And so one of the things that Neuroverity does, we, for people, women who are in leadership positions, we look specifically at senior leaders in leadership positions, and we bring on board the organization to help them to create environments where women can be themselves, where women can have the capacity to lead in all their genius, because now we've created an environment where you don't have to be somebody different here at work than you are at home, than you are within your community, because the load of just being somebody different at work is enough to create capacity erosion at work, and then it affects performance, it affects the bottom line of work. But if you're able to, again, operate from your nervous system, and organizations recognizing that this is where our leaders need to lead from, and we need to be in alignment with that, then we've got women in their full geniuses in positions that they are able to perform in the way that they believe that they should, that they want to. But going back to everything that we do and the life experience that we have is based on our nervous system. And one of the things I think we talked about before was, I believe wholeheartedly that neural integrated leadership is going to be the new way of leadership development, that leadership development is going to have to focus on nervous system, brain, identity, and all of those things before it can be impactful in developing leaders. Because we've got to look at the things that actually are the foundation to performance. And that is going to be, does the leader have the capacity to perform effectively in the role, because they have a nervous system and an environment that we've created that's going to allow them to do so. And until we can have, coaching, and all of those things are amazing. Executive coaching, amazing. Assessments that they're doing, surveys about the organization, beautiful. But until we recognize that leaders are not even going to have access to the skills that they've developed if they have a nervous system that's constantly running on threat mode, if they're constantly in environments that are creating stress and capacity erosion.
Absolutely. We never know what path life is going to throw at us. We really don't, But if we get more understanding, greater understanding, especially from things like what you've shared today, it helps to process,
Yes.
what it is. So that, I mean, for me, just to know that I have the ability, because I always thought the brain was just pre-programmed, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, you go to school and yes, you learn this. And I know that, you take in your environment and your belief system. I'm a woman
Yes.
of faith, so I believe in intricately weaving in my belief system. Other
Yes.
people have different belief systems, and that's fine.
Right.
What worked for you,
Right.
but to know that I have the ability to change how my
Yes.
brain functions,
Yes.
how it takes care of me, the body.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
It's
mind
next
boggling.
level.
It is. It is. It is. I mean, even your example of in your healing process to play your own voice,
Mm-hmm.
speaking to yourself and putting on the headphones so that you were sleeping with it, so your brain was hearing what you were telling it.
Yeah.
That's like, I mean, you did it for healing, but even in leadership, even in,
Yes.
just the reprogramming of how I view myself. Some
Yes.
people have very low self-esteem. Some people have been through so much
Yes.
trauma in their life that, the brain, like we had talked earlier, the brain is in that survival mode.
Yes.
And so, I'm not going to let you experience. I have, I've talked about you ever since you were on the show. I'm
Yeah.
serious, because this was just really fascinating me. And, and so like I was sharing some of the things that you talked about, and one of my guests after you, she was talking about, she did not know, truly, literally did not remember her
Mm-hmm.
molestation as a child for 20 some
Oh. Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
20 some years. And I began to share what you had shared, that
Mm-hmm.
the brain will be your protector. And
Yeah.
so basically that her brain just says, this is too traumatic for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
no, you're not going to remember
Right.
until you're ready, until you're able,
Right.
to
Right.
deal with it. So I just think this is so profound. Even when we start to think about, well, why and especially in leadership, because see, here's the thing:
Mm-hmm.
if you are messed up inside, hurt
Yes.
leaders hurt people.
100%. 100%.
So
And
we got to get it together as leaders. Go ahead.
here's the thing, that when you recognize that, it allows you to offer grace to them, because a lot of times we'll have an amazing position, we love it, we're doing impactful work, but there's a leader who is causing life to just be challenging, life in terms of your work environment. And women will leave an organization, leave the work that they love to do, leave the impact and the legacy. They will leave it behind because of a leader, because of a supervisor, because of a manager, because of a CEO. And when you recognize that this is someone who is leading and has not recognized yet that he is leading from past hurts, pains, programming, patterns, he's leading from that space, you will offer grace and compassion to him. And that will allow you to continue to do the work that you love without the focus and attention on what he's doing. Because so many times we are triggered by their behavior, and how can they act like this and how can they be like this, because we don't understand. They are responding not to this environment. They are not leading from a place of conscious awareness of these patterns, that they are leading from that space. And once you recognize that, then you can allow yourself to not be triggered by what they're doing. And then that affects you. Because anytime we're operating, again, from survival mode, anytime we're operating from a space where our brain is telling us that something is not safe, we are not able to access the skills that we have, the creativity that we have, the genius that we have behind us. We don't even have access to that because the brain is like, what do I need to do to protect you and keep you safe at this point? And that means I can't focus on you being creative. I can't focus on you, on getting out of alignment of of how I need to protect you right now. It is all full on protection mode. And when we recognize again and have conscious awareness and actually learn to regulate some of these things, then we are able to get in spaces where we can offer grace to people who are not behaving appropriately. And then we can continue to focus on our genius. We can continue to focus on the work that we do, the impact that we want to have without having our attention towards, somebody who's acting out. And I'm always like, leaders act out so much because they have people that they can act out on, but we've got to get smarter.
Wrong mentality.
Yes.
That's that power trip thing. Wrong
Yes.
mentality.
Yes.
And we do it as women too. Like we
Sure.
normally we attribute that to men, but that's not true.
Yeah.
I've seen women that have just literally beat up on other women just because
they
felt that
Yes.
it made them superior. And
Yes.
it's like, well, so you know me. If you don't go sit down someplace.
Exactly.
you got the right one right here, okay?
Exactly.
But this has been so fascinating, Robin. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Again, like you said in the beginning, people think science and they don't tie it into how it regulates who we are.
Right.
No,
right.
How
right.
it regulates who we are. This has been so empowering. One of the ladies has put in the chat that Tampa, Florida has a brain bus that tests your brain at no cost. And she put the link on there. I think that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
I hadn't heard of that.
This is this is definitely been amazing. I so appreciate you. I really do. Thank you for taking the time. And you explain things so simplistically that we can understand.
Can I tell you?
Over the head, like what? Huh?
I need to. The way that my brain functions is things have to make sense to me. I've got to be able to apply it. Even when I think about biblically, I've got to be able to practically apply it to my life somehow, or it's not going to make sense. I'm not going to do it. And I think that's where, my passion comes in, is that like, if we just understood just some of the basic things that we could practically apply to, our lives, and it's applicable to work, home, community, job, everywhere. Just know how we were brilliantly designed, to walk this earth and have an abundant life. Not that life is going to, be roses and sunshine all the time, but our perspective on it, when we understand how we were designed, how we're responding, what we're believing, it allows us to have the experience that we want. If you don't want to, be someone who is experiencing life negatively and everything is always happening to me and why does things not work out? If you just on some occasions change perspective and understood the way that you might be thinking about this very situation, is it true? Is it really true, or is it based on, because so much of what we experience every day is not based on the actual reality of the moment. It is based on, our past patterns, beliefs, the way that we were programmed. And that's not a knock on parents or parenting. And I think sometimes as moms, when you hear that, it's like, oh, my children are a product of me. Well, they are. And that worked because they survived. That's the first matter of business. They survived. So you did something right. But at some point, we all should get to spaces where we want to be something greater, something better. And that's what our parents want. My mom always said, I want you to be better than I ever was, So, okay, well, how do I do that?
That's that legacy. You said something, and it's funny because I say that all the time. Make it make sense. If I
Mhm.
can't make it make sense, then I laugh, and people really, they trip with me because I'm like, yeah, I went to Catholic school growing up and got an F in religion. If you know
Oh
who
my
I am today, that's just like, huh? Because you couldn't make it make sense.
oh my
I
gosh.
asked you a question, you could not make it make sense. And instead of you trying to explain it, you failed me.
Mhm.
I'm to this day, I don't believe
Mm,
in religion. And I am so a woman of faith. I believe in a relationship. I don't believe in
100%.
religion. I don't believe in the man-made traditions. I just, you know what I'm saying? Because you can't make it make sense.
100%.
You can't make it make
100.
sense. Okay. So if you can make it make sense, we can talk. Okay.
Right.
And
Right.
I try to keep an open mind about different things, because I want to understand. I've always been a learner. I love to
Mhm.
learn and I want to understand.
Yes.
But the words that are coming out your mouth don't make sense to me,
I
and
can't.
you can't make it make sense, it's like,
Yeah.
boy, bye.
Yes,
Girl,
same.
bye.
Same. And you
You're
know what
welcome.
I'll do? It's funny that you say that because I will ask 100 questions. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, how does that work? Well, because I need to be able to process it in a way. Again, my brain has to it's make sense. It's got to make sense because I'm always open to, one of the things I think that has been who I've been and continue to be. As a kid, I was extremely inquisitive. Um, as an adult, more inquisitive. And I read a lot, I research a lot. Because I gotta understand life.
Yeah.
I gotta understand when I'm working through something, is this truth and reality, or is this something I was taught to believe?
Mhm.
Because
And you were told just to believe it just because
just
I
to
said it.
believe,
Oh
how many
no, that
times?
that never worked for me because I said so.
Yes, but we've
You
all
got
heard
to
that.
go a little deeper than that.
We've all heard that before, but it's like it's got to make sense. And for me, neuroscience and faith together makes the world make sense to me, because it shows me that what God said in His Word about who we can be, how we can live, what are my He's allowed provision for that, and neuroscience confirms it. If he said we can be healed, we can lay hands on the sick, those things can actually happen because he's set mechanisms in place to allow that. So he's not saying something that can't be done, and he's not giving us provision or the ability to do it. He literally has given us the ability to do it because there's mechanisms in place that allow it. And so understanding that and recognizing that makes life, for me, make sense. Not every instance in
You
life.
put it to the test. You put
Hmm?
it to the test. You're
Yeah,
a walking, living, breathing testament to you put it to the test that your
put it to
body could heal itself.
put it to the test. And we all and I had to be able to, when I shared my experience with people, and I told them, oh, I healed by meditation and prayer, and I was like, now, to some people, that's not going to make sense, because it really didn't make sense to me. So I had to be able to say, it's not that I'm special or that I did anything different than anybody else could do. This is universal. Rewiring our brain is universal. We were all designed with the ability and capability to do it. We just have to understand how to do it. And that's having some basic understanding and information about how the brain and nervous system work. And so that's where my passion is. It's why I share, because it doesn't take a lot to rewire our brain and become the people that we want to be. It is just understanding first and believing that there's the possibility to do so.
Thank you, ma'am. I thank you. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming
I
on and
appreciate you.
sharing. And even the comments say the women have really appreciated. They have appreciated, and I don't believe I'm the only one sitting here that have learned some things, right? I was just like, I was so ready because, like I said, when you came on Unstoppable Lionesses and you shared, and it was just so fascinating to me, because it puts things in clearer perspective
Yes.
of how, because I've been saying this for 30 some years, like, the body was designed to heal itself.
Yes.
I've always, first of all, I said, I'm not accepting any cancers or anything, any diseases, I'm not. And then I said, but I definitely would not do some of the treatments and I'm not talking against anybody, but I'm like, you're not putting that poison in my system. My body was designed to heal itself. I know it was, I've had instances, not as extensive as yours, but where I've literally felt my body healing itself.
100%.
And so, hey, I believe it. That was the design.
And if we're exposed to this information, so for me, sharing this information, it's information that I want other people to go out and share with their family, their friends. Now with access to, AI and information, little basic things that you hear in conversations, you can go back and research them, but just having a place to start, is a good thing. And so that's what I want. I want to be able to share information so that you can take it and you can share it with somebody. And it becomes a generational thing. If we understand how we impact children as moms and caregivers, then it changes sometimes how we decide we're going to be as a mom and a caregiver. We recognize really the impact, and we know that you create that child, but when we understand how we really calibrate their nervous system, how they respond to threat in environments, and we understand really, really, really how important that is, but how simple it is to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's going to, benefit generation to generation, then we, really are conscious of behavior.
Amen. Robin, tell people how they can reach you. And ladies, please put in the chat. Like I said, I've been so enthroned. Normally, I tell them this all through the section. Please put your information in the chat so you can connect with one another. But if you guys are like me, you've been on the edge of your seat going, really? Okay, really?
I appreciate that. I can be found on LinkedIn, of course, Robin R. Banks. On robinrbanks.com is my personal and professional website. And then Neuroverity, neuroverityglobal.com is my company website. And that's where you'll find a lot of information about what we do corporate wise. Awesome. But I would love if there's, questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or DM me on social media. I'm always open to answer any questions and also provide direction. Neuroscience is a vast and can be complex field, but there's some simple places to start and simple information that if you have, it is very, it's impactful. So I'm more than happy to, again, answer questions that you might have or point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you again. I appreciate
you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, ladies, for joining in. I appreciate you. Thank you for all of your comments and input. Everything has been a blessing. It really, really has. And so I'm grateful. All right, ladies.
Thank you so much.
That's it for today. See you next month. All right. God bless.
Thank you.